Let's go back now to our top story, the offensive to retake Mosul. It's said to be the biggest Iraqi military operation since the withdrawal of American forces in 2011. It's estimated over 100,000 people will be involved in the assault, but not all of them will actually be fighting. There are said to be roughly 15,000 paramilitary fighters, among them a variety of armed groups, including 8,000 Sunni fighters, as well as Christians, Turkmen and Yazidis. Shia paramilitaries won't enter Mosul itself, but they will secure areas around the city. The Kurdish Peshmerga say they have well over 40,000 fighters. The Iraqi security forces say they have between 40 and 65,000 soldiers on the ground, including members of the Iraqi police force. The international coalition has 9,000 troops, although the coalition says they will not be fighting. That does include, however, 5,000 US soldiers. The US military says there are about 6,000 ISIL fighters still in Mosul, but ISIL supporters say there could be many, many more. Well, Ranj Alaaldin is a visiting fellow at the Brookings Institute here in Doha. Welcome to the NewsHour. As a military operation, what's your analysis of how it's going so far?
Well, it's still early days, of course. Most of the villages that have been taken were previously empty. The more difficult battle will be coming in the coming weeks, in the coming months, especially as the forces get closer and closer towards Mosul city. You'll have a number of key ISIS checkpoints, areas where they are much more dominant to contend with. So the battle will be getting more and more difficult in the coming days and weeks. But it's still too early right now for that main battle to take place, because they've got to reach Mosul city itself, reach the more urban parts of the province.
How much potentially of this is a problem for the government, in as much as, yes, OK, ISIL took it in 2014. There was the whole thing over the Mosul dam. They had the dam, they didn't have the dam, they had the dam. But as far back as 2003, Mosul was the hotbed of anti-government sentiment, and it was humiliating when it fell. So how does the government obviously want to defeat ISIL, but also deal with that sentiment that may be lingering there still?
Of course, so there's the military component and the political component to this campaign, to this operation. The military aspect will be far more easier. It'll be much more easier, straightforward to deal with ISIS militarily. They're up against a heavy military power, heavy firepower, manpower. There's a massive Western presence in the country. Now, the political side could take much longer, because you have to remedy certain grievances, the sectarian divisions. You need a legitimate, viable local force that can provide security that is respected by the population in Mosul. That doesn't exist right now. There are still uncertainties about who it is that's going to be doing the rebuilding after this operation, and that will be crucial. That question will be crucial to answering your question and the future of the province and Iraq more generally.
Obviously, an awful lot of planning has gone into this, not least because it feels as if it's happening maybe 6 or 8 weeks after they all said it would happen, because they were talking about July, August, September time originally. But if you just look at the map of who controls what, it's obviously a foothold for the government forces. That's primarily why they're going in there. If they get it, no matter how long it takes, if it falls back to being under the control of the government, can they sustain it? Can they hold it?
Well, this is the crucial question. To make the gains, the military gains count, you have to hold on to the territories you capture. Now, for that, you need a fully functional, effective, unified security force. At the moment, the Iraqi security forces, as your segment just alluded to, is heavily fragmented. So you've got an array of actors on the ground, each with their own agendas, each with their own stake in this operation, in the future of Iraq more generally. So to keep hold of this territory, you need to have a viable, regular military. At the moment, the responsibility comes down to the Iraqi Special Forces and the Arab Sunni groups, who are expected to continue the fight in the city. But to keep hold of it, you need a fully functioning, effective, regular military.
When you talk about the actors on the ground, al-Baghdadi, do you think he's still there?
I mean, it's very difficult to comment on that. I think ISIS knew this operation was coming quite a long time ago. They've had sufficient time to prepare. I don't think they'll risk it all by having their leader in Mosul itself, especially with the encroachment of all these forces. I think it's highly unlikely, given that they still have, or there's still a long way to go in this conflict, and ISIS knows that this will be a long, drawn-out battle.
If they take Mosul, say it takes 4 weeks, say it takes 2 months, say it's even Christmas time, if they take Mosul, the template is not necessarily transferable, because then people will be saying, surely, oh, Raqqa is next.
Not at all. There is no comparison, simply because in Iraq the conditions are very different. The civil war you have in Syria is much more intense than the one in Iraq. In Iraq, you have a serious investment of resources from the international community. They are heavily invested in this conflict in Iraq, both in terms of the military presence, but also the intelligence gathering capabilities. You've got a far more viable local security force in Iraq than you do in Syria. Syria is a much more complicated conflict because of its fragmented nature, the involvement of regional powers who are heavily and actively present in Syria, whereas in Iraq, then that isn't the case as much as it is in Syria.
Ranj Alaaldin, thank you very much.
Pleasure.